Welcome to our deep dive into nocturnal lemurs. I know our listeners are ready to learn more about these fascinating creatures.
Yeah, it's a really cool topic.
It is. So let's jump right into the nocturnal lemurs of Madagascar.
That sounds good.
These primates have incredible adaptations for life in the dark.
They really do?
Some of them even use something like sonar to find food.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And speaking of unique, Madagascar is the only place lemurs exist in the wild.
Oh, wow. So it's like their own little kingdom.
Exactly. And because the island is so isolated,
Right.
a really diverse range of lemur species have evolved there.
Especially the nocturnal ones.
Especially those.
So we're not just talking about one type of nocturnal lemur then,
Not at all. You've got the eye.
with that crazy long finger.
Exactly. But also smaller primates like mouse lemurs
Oh, wow.
and even dwarf lemurs that hibernate.
Really? I had no idea.
Each species has its own unique adaptations,
Wow, that's so cool.
all for thriving in Madagascar's environment.
That's incredible. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing how they've adapted to survive in the darkness.
Yeah, it really is.
What kind of sensory adaptations do they have to navigate and find food?
Well, their senses are just remarkable.
Hmm.
Nocturnal lemurs have evolved these large eyes
I see pictures. They're huge.
and are incredibly sensitive to light,
So they can see in, like, pitch black.
pretty much. But it's not just vision.
Oh, right.
They also have incredible hearing,
Okay.
and their sense of smell is way more developed than ours.
Huh. I never thought about that.
All these senses work together
Right.
to paint a picture of their surroundings even without sunlight.
I'm picturing them moving through the forest using those heightened senses
Yeah,
to, like, make a mental map of their environment.
exactly. They pick up on cues we wouldn't even notice.
Like what?
Well, some species can hear insects under the bark.
Wow.
And speaking of hearing, that brings us back to the eye.
Oh, yeah, the eye with that crazy finger.
Exactly, and it's percussive foraging.
How does that long finger help with the sonar?
Well, that finger is key to its hunting strategy.
Okay.
It taps on trees and creates vibrations.
Mm.
The vibrations travel through the wood,
Uh-huh.
and its finger is so sensitive,
Yeah.
it can detect the echoes of grubs moving around.
So it's like a built-in echolocation system.
Exactly. And that's how they pinpoint their prey.
That is incredible.
It's a perfect example of specialized adaptations for survival.
Okay, that's amazing. But now tell me about those mouse lemurs.
Oh, yeah, the tiny ones.
The smallest primates in the world.
That's right.
How do they survive with all those predators?
Well, their size is actually a benefit.
Oh, really? I would have thought it'd be the opposite.
It lets them access food that larger lemurs can't.
Oh, that makes sense.
And they're really agile, so they can navigate the dense foliage.
It's like little acrobats.
Exactly. And because they're nocturnal,
Right.
they encounter fewer predators.
That's smart.
But of course, they still have to watch out for snakes and owls.
And other lemurs.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's a constant game of survival out there.
Yeah, it really is.
You also mentioned dwarf lemurs that hibernate, right?
Yes. That's another fascinating adaptation.
So how do they survive for months without food?
Well, that's where the fat-tailed part comes in.
Oh, right. I forgot about their tail.
They store fat in their tails all year.
Like their own personal pantry.
Exactly. Then during hibernation, their metabolism slows down
And they can live off their tail fat.
until the rains return.
It's like they've evolved their own survival kit.
It really is remarkable.
This adaptation is so crucial.
Especially with Madagascar's unpredictable climate.
It makes you appreciate all the different ways animals survive.
For sure.
We've talked about incredible senses, special hunting techniques, and even hibernation.
It's crazy, right?
It's clear that nocturnal lemurs are more than just cute faces,
Absolutely.
and their importance goes beyond their own survival, too.
Definitely. They play a vital role in Madagascar's ecosystems.
Oh, wow. In what way?
They help keep the whole forest healthy and balanced.
Really? Tell me more about that.
We'll take seed dispersal, for instance. Okay,
Many nocturnal lemurs eat fruits,
I can imagine.
and as they move through the forest,
Right.
they disperse the seeds through their droppings.
So they're like accidental gardeners?
You could say that.
Right.
And their role in pollination is important, too.
How so?
When they feed on nectar from flowers,
Yeah.
pollen sticks to their fur and gets carried to other plants.
Oh, that's cool.
So they help with fertilization.
Okay, so they're helping with seed dispersal and pollination.
Exactly.
What about insects?
Oh, yeah. Insects are a big part of it, too.
How so?
Many nocturnal lemurs eat insects,
Uh-huh.
and this helps regulate insect populations.
So they prevent outbreaks.
Exactly. Which is important for a healthy forest.
It's amazing how these nocturnal activities
Yeah.
have such a big impact on the whole forest.
It is.
It shows that even small creatures play a big role
That's so true.
in keeping the balance of the ecosystem.
It really highlights how everything is connected.
Right. Each species has a purpose.
And unfortunately, when one is threatened,
Yeah, it affects everything else.
which brings us back to those threats we talked about.
Right.
Habitat destruction is a major concern.
It's the biggest one for sure.
Can you tell me more about the specific challenges they face?
Well, sadly, habitat loss is the primary threat.
Hmm.
When forests are cleared for things like agriculture,
Uh-huh.
the lemurs lose their homes and food.
That's awful.
And when their habitat is fragmented,
Yeah.
it makes it hard for them to find mates.
So their populations decline.
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking that humans are putting them at risk.
I agree.
You also mentioned that the ii is hunted because of superstitions.
Yes,
So you
unfortunately.
tell me more about that.
Well, in some parts of Madagascar,
Yeah.
people see the eye as bad luck.
Because it looks so strange.
Yeah, and they kill them on sight.
Oh, wow. That's so sad.
It's a tragic example of how fear can impact conservation.
What's being done to change those perceptions?
Education is key.
Okay.
Conservation organizations are working with communities to dispel the myths and teach people about the aya's importance.
That makes sense.
And they're also establishing protected areas.
So the iis can live safely.
Exactly.
Protected areas are a good first step.
For sure.
What other strategies are being used to protect them?
Well, it's a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
Along with protected areas,
Yeah.
we need to promote sustainable land management.
Right, so people don't have to clear forests.
Exactly.
It's about finding a balance.
Between human needs and conservation.
It sounds like a complex challenge.
It is.
It needs collaboration from scientists, conservationists, and local people.
You got it.
And international cooperation, too.
Definitely for funding and support.
That's incredible to think about.
It is.
We've learned so much in this deep dive,
We have.
from the ii's echolocation to the dwarf lemur's hibernation.
So cool, right?
It's clear that nocturnal lemurs are masters of survival,
They really are.
and they do it in such fascinating ways.
And we still have so much to learn about them.
I know. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's so much more to discover.
I'm curious about how the different levels of darkness throughout the lunar cycle might affect their behavior.
Ah, that's interesting.
Do they become more or less active during certain phases of the moon?
That's a great question, and researchers are still figuring that out. There's some evidence that certain species might change their foraging patterns based on the moonlight.
That makes sense.
Right. A full moon would make them more visible to predators.
But it could also make it easier to find food.
Exactly. It's a trade-off.
It's amazing how complex these ecosystems are.
It really is. Everything is connected.
So given everything we've talked about,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the most important one is that even small creatures like nocturnal lemurs
Right.
can have a huge impact on their environment.
It's a good reminder that everything is connected.
Exactly. And that protecting biodiversity is crucial.
It's also a reminder that we're not separate from nature.
That's a good point.
Our actions have consequences.
Definitely.
Even those that seem unrelated to conservation can affect these ecosystems.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
So what can our listeners do to help protect these creatures and their habitats?
Well, there are lots of ways to get involved.
Like what?
Supporting conservation organizations is a great start.
Okay.
And educating yourself and others about biodiversity
Right.
and sustainable practices is also important.
So even small changes in our daily lives can make a difference.
Exactly. Like reducing consumption and choosing sustainable products.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of this global community.
And that our actions can create positive change.
Well said. I hope this deep dive has inspired our listeners
Me too.
to keep learning about the natural world.
There's always more to discover.
Who knows what other secrets are out there?
I can't wait to find out.
It's amazing to think about everything we've learned,
I know, right?
from echolocation to hibernation.
It's crazy all the different ways they've adapted.
Nocturnal lemurs really are masters of survival.
Definitely, they've mastered the art of surviving in darkness.
And they've done it in such fascinating ways.
It makes you realize just how much we still don't know.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's so much more to learn out there.
Speaking of learning more,
Yeah.
I'm curious about the lunar cycle.
Oh, yeah.
How do the varying levels of darkness affect their behavior?
That's a great question.
Do they change how active they are during different phases of the moon?
Well, researchers are still looking into that.
Oh, wow. So we don't really know yet.
Not for sure, but there is some evidence that some species
Uh-huh.
might adjust their foraging based on how much moonlight there is.
That makes sense.
Yeah. A full moon would make them easier for predators to see.
Right, but it would also make it easier for them to find food.
Exactly. It's a balance.
It really highlights how complex this all is.
Everything is connected.
So with everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing is that even small creatures like these can have a huge impact on their environment.
That's a good reminder.
It shows how everything is connected.
And how important it is to protect biodiversity.
Definitely.
It's also a reminder that we're not separate from nature.
We're all part of it.
Our actions have consequences.
For sure.
And those consequences can ripple out and affect these ecosystems even if we don't realize it.
It's all connected.
So what can our listeners do?
To help.
Yeah, to protect these creatures and their habitats.
Well, there are a lot of things people can do.
Like what?
Supporting conservation organizations is a great start.
Okay.
You can donate or volunteer.
Uh-huh.
And education is also crucial.
Right, spreading the word.
Exactly. Tell your friends and family about nocturnal lemurs and the challenges they face.
And we can also make changes in our own lives.
Yeah, like reducing our consumption.
And choosing sustainable products.
Those small changes can add up.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of a global community.
And our actions can create positive change.
I think that's a great note to end on.
I agree.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of nocturnal lemurs.
It was my pleasure.
I hope you learned something new and that you'll continue to explore the wonders of the natural world.
There's always something new to discover.